As Bruce mentioned, I'm just going to introduce some methods we use to approach plant ID. So it's more about how to approach the intention to understand our ngahere, our forests, and where to start if you're starting, or where to further your learning if you've already made some progress. Before I get into that, I'd just like to draw your attention to a bit of a resource table we have up here, some examples of resources you can access. And included in that is this handout which Tony, our fabulous colleague here, has put together. It has relevant resources for ecological restoration, not just plant ID. There's 20 odd copies, so first in, first served, but it's on our website. This will be on our website soon. Another version is there currently, but I'll get to that when I get back to Hamilton. So do have a little browse there and take some notes if you like, or take photos of the books that you're interested in so you can find your own copies in the library or purchase them. So, as I said, introduction to New Zealand plant identification. So, Aotearoa, New Zealand is home to over 2,300 native vascular plants. Vascular meaning the large plants we see around. We're not going to delve into mosses, lichens and liverworts at this point because that might put you to sleep. But we'll stick with those, and that's the figure we claim for our native fauna. But crucially, 80% of those are endemic. So learning about New Zealand's flora is a real treat because not many other people get to do it around the world. We've got our own plants, they're special to our place, and they're really fantastic to get to know. They're really important for insects, birds and people. They support all of us, and Kitty touched on that with the ecosystem services. So really special. This is the opening Yay Our Plants slide, and I think half of you are already on that buzz anyway. So they are special because they've evolved in isolation since New Zealand separated from Gondwana land 60 to 80 million years ago, and there's only been a few recent additions. So they've just separated off onto their own, did their own thing, and developed some interesting and unique characteristics as a result. And we have lots of names for them. So we start with some botanical names, but we also have Māori names and English names. We have one botanical name for every species, but we can have one or two or three Māori names, or one or two or three English names. So it's a lot to keep in here, and that's why we've got some fantastic books available and other resources to help you. We do start with the botanical names when we're teaching plant identification because it does avoid that confusion between what someone up north might call puka and what someone in the South Island might call puka. They're two different species, and that inhibits learning if you're not talking about the same plant and you're having a heated argument about whether it has serrated leaves or not, because you're both right, it's just a different plant. But there's lots to be learned from the other names, and I in no way suggest that you should only learn our botanical names. There's stories behind the other names that these plants have, the English and Māori names, so you can get to that, but do try it with the botanical names as well. So in New Zealand we have an incredible vast array of landscapes. Where do our native plants exist? You might think of them just out here or in the lowlands where most people live, but in fact we have a native plant for every habitat in this country. And this, which is straight from the New Zealand Plant Conservation Network resources, I just want to credit them, this is all of their work. This gives us a little glimpse into the native plants and their amazing ability to grow anywhere and everywhere, from Whangarei to Invercargill and both coasts, everywhere in between. So they're specialists for all of these spots, and that makes them particularly amazing in my eyes because they have, as I said earlier, they've evolved in isolation to make all of these different places on our one country make it their own. And each of those different habitats or ecosystem has a whole range of habitats. So we're looking at the big picture. If we narrow it down, if we look at a forest, we have strata to show that we have plants that are emergent, the big trees that grow in the forest and grow above the canopy. We have canopy species, we have sub-canopy species, shrubs, and the forest floor. Remember, this isn't even getting into the non-vascular mosses, lichens, and liverworts. So big picture down to narrow, there's lots of plants growing in lots of spots and with lots of amazing characteristics. So, in my opinion, getting to know our native plants really enriches our nature experiences. I've had roles, I've been with a lot of different people in different natural environments, and if people can learn something, if they can engage with something, they take a lot more from the experience, from 3-year-olds to 90-year-olds. So if you're ever in that privileged position of teaching someone about native nature, I encourage you to do so, because it will enrich both parties. It will enrich their learning and your teaching, and everyone cares more about things which they understand. So that's why I've made that point. And coming from that point, it also connects people to our natural heritage. People have a strong place in their hearts for puhu te kawa often, because they know it, they've got that connection, they know it, they understand and they care. But if we can broaden that out to our amazing range of native species, we get more care, more engagement and more connection with our natural heritage. Specifically for this workshop, it improves restoration success. If you know your plants, you know which plant to plant in which place, like Bruce was talking about. And you might notice if you've got an Australian species rather than a New Zealand species. Good first step. And personally, I find it extremely satisfying. It's like getting to know new people. You get to know them when you visit new places. I haven't spent much time in that here, but we've already been playing Spot the Natives as we arrived at our accommodation last night, or rather this morning, because it was dark when we arrived. And throughout today, Tony and I were commenting on the nice native trees planted out here. So it's just really satisfying. So how do we do it? How do we go about identifying native plants? Well, everyone does it differently, and it all starts with observation. But this is one way to approach it. Some tools that you can take reliably, step 1, 2 and 3, to help you identify new species, something you might never seen before, or you've seen it many times but you want to know a name so that you can get to know it and learn more about it. Step 1, growth form. Are we looking at a tree, a shrub, a tree fern, another tree, a vine, moss? We're not going to do mosses today. Lichens, an epiphyte. Who can remember what an epiphyte was? Kirby spoke about.
The plant that grows off the tree.
Perfect. High five to them. The plants that perch on other plants. They don't take anything from their host. The ones that are parasitic and take from their host are mistletoes. I'll tell you all about that later. And ferns, there's just some examples. So you've got to think about, where am I looking? Where does this grow in the forest? And that you need to think about the context as well. If you've got a plant just from a garden centre, you might not know if that's a tree or a shrub. You should be able to do shrub or fern, but it's best to start in a natural environment, try and find something in this natural environment to understand that growth form. Step 2 is leaf arrangement. Let's look at this one particular plant. I'm going to take this as my example throughout the rest of this brief talk. How are these leaves arranged? So you've got 2 basic options. Are they alternate, in that they're like one, then the other, then the other, then the other? Or are they opposite, so that they're growing in pairs opposite each other? Opposite plants, often the pairs will be facing one way, and then the next pair are on a different plane, so that helps. So that's something I want us to do today. If you have an opportunity when we're on our little field trip, have a look at a plant near you, choose one, and see if you can at least start with alternate or opposite. If you're using a vegetative key, which is kind of a very in-depth way to identify what the plant is, they always start with looking at your plant, are the leaves alternate or opposite? And we always start with leaves in New Zealand because most of our plants are evergreen, so that's great. That's an advantage we have over, say, where Kitty learnt plants first in the Northern Hemisphere, where we had to learn bark because half the time they didn't have leaves. So take that advantage when we have it. But it also means our New Zealand plants often aren't showing big glossy displays of flowers. The flowers are often a little small or subtle or for a very short season, so we stick with the leaves as our main thing for identification, main tool. Step 3, are your leaves, now that you know if they're opposite or alternate, are they simple or compound? So on the left here we have simple leaves, it's a leaf. Whereas here we have compound leaves. So this is still a leaf, but it's got leaflets. And you can see that they're still joined. So that's step 3, and we're going to hopefully be able to find some examples. So looking at our our unknown plant here, which more than half of you probably know what it is, we'll play the game. This is a simple leaf. It's just, it's just simple. So, I'm sure I had a great line for that planned. And then step 4, are these leaves entire or are they toothed or lobed? So here's some examples from Louise Hardy. This is an entire leaf. This one's got tiny little teeth. Sorry, this one in the middle. And this one is lobed. So it's just getting to know those terms for things that you're all very familiar with. If you understand what the term is, you've got a tool to then ask the next question. So this leaf is entire. It's got no teeth on the edge. Sometimes you have to look very, very closely, and even if you're really into it, get a little magnifying glass and look at the edge of that leaf, because sometimes there's tiny little sharp teeth, and that's a toothed leaf. So our mystery plant has an entire leaf. Then it gets a bit more detailed. So what kind of lobes, what kind of teeth, and that's when you really do want to have your resources on hand. Have a look at some of these over here. These sketches are, yeah, they're amazing, and you might not need this level of detail because you might have worked out, I've got this, 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 so I've probably got this plant, and I kind of know it's not plant A, it's not a cherry, so maybe it's a Mercini or something like that. You might be able to already have that background knowledge, but if you're totally unsure, this is the next step. It gets into some more details. I'm not going to go through all of those, this is the introduction, but that's when you have a lot of fantastic books available to help you. So I do have some examples of those details that we get into. This is just looking at the leaf tip and all the words that are helpful for describing different leaf tips. So we have, and then if you have these photos to help you to give examples of what they mean. So we have acute and we have obtuse and rounded, and getting to know those terms. It's just another language, but it's yes or no questions. Is the leaf tip obtuse? No. Is it rounded? Yes. So then you follow that path. Another element of detail is the venation. So looking closely at the leaf, often with the light behind you, will show up the vein pattern, and they're all distinct. So that plant will have its own distinct venation that will be different from maybe a cousin that looks quite similar. It's a useful characteristic. Or flowers. So when it is flowering, what is the arrangement of the flowers? How big are they? What colour are they? They are useful when you get into this detailed level. So with our mystery plant, I've put together our clues. We know that the leaves are alternate. We know that they're simple and entire. We know it has tiny little flowers, and it has these clasping leaf bases or petioles that are reddish in colour, and it has green berry-like fruit. It also has asymmetrical leaf bases, so that means up here, this side of the leaf comes in here, but this one doesn't meet it, it comes in earlier. That's a key feature of this plant. And reddish purple petioles that clasp onto the stem. So who knows what this plant is, or who wants to guess?
It's pucca, isn't it?
It is pucca. This is Grisellinia lucida.
It's an epiphyte, and am I surprised that Catherine chose it as their working example? No.
Because I was fairly confident about what it was. I spent a whole thesis on it. So this is an example of Grisellinia lucida. It's it is our largest shrub epiphyte, and it can grow. This one is probably 10 metres across, growing on a cliff, but it can grow that big up in a tree. So a really cool and interesting species that's evolved fascinating ways of getting that big without direct access to soil or the water that's in the water table. We can talk about that later, I promise. So these resources I keep mentioning, that is the key. Know your resources. And a lot of them are old books, but they're still really good books. You just need to be up to date with any name changes, and that's where websites and apps come in. They're quite useful. So these are some of my favourite books. The Flora of New Zealand is the comprehensive guide with all the information, but you're going to be hit with all of the terminology and abbreviations there. So that underpins basically all the other books, but it's pretty intense. It's not the beginner's guide. What is better if you're a beginner, intermediate, or even somewhere past that are the Trees and Shrubs of New Zealand, Paul and Adams. And then more recently, Dawson and Lucas, which is just this beautiful book. But that's just on the trees, so be aware of what they do cover and don't cover. Because you might be looking at a big shrub thinking it's a small tree, and it's not your tree book, so that's a bit of a frustration. So it's useful to have a bit of a library, at least that you're aware of, so that you can access it if you need it. This one's really good. That's also really narrow though, 103 species. And a lot of them go way up above your head, so it's pretty hard to spot. But this is Bruce's fault, because I was complaining that during my masters, in which I studied epiphytes, I had to carry this book and that book and the 3 previous ones to when I'm looking at my one epiphyte, trying to work out what it is. And I said, there needs to be one book on these epiphytes. And so when I finished my masters, he's like, oh, go on then. And so I had my opportunity to chip away at that. I was very grateful. And online resources are really, really good now. They're developing quickly. This is my favourite, the New Zealand Plant Conservation Network, and I have to acknowledge that one of their documents has been very useful for producing this talk. This website you can search by Latin or common names, so that's helpful, and they've got a pretty good library. It should come up with some good hits for you. And it has native and quite a lot of our exotic flora as well as alien species. It also has species lists for different areas, so you might be able to find one for your reserve or for maybe the wider Hawke's Bay, although we do have some of those here too. So this is kind of one of those websites where the further you dig, the more gold you find. It's really, really helpful. And pretty good photos too, so that's always really useful when you're learning. The Manaki Whenua Plant Identification and Interactive Keys are really useful tools. Again, a key is a set of yes-no questions that will eventually lead you to your answer. And there's a whole set of different ones on this website. And now the apps. I haven't had a lot of experience with these. Has anyone used? There's 2 apps for Plant ID. How have you found it?
It's kind of alright, some things that comes up, but the peach tree I was trying to identify wasn't a peach, but it also wasn't on their database.
They're always going to have their limitations, but they're probably just going to get better and better. It could just be another tool that gives you another clue, or it might be you get to, is it A or is it B, and this might answer your question. I'm not sure. So this is Flora Finder from Otago University. There's also NZ Trees from AUT. So understanding those tools is the first step. You can also use websites like Nature Watch, or even depending on who your friends are, Facebook, say, what's this plant? That's really helpful, and you can often have a conversation about what it is. And on Nature Watch you can get professionals helping you identify your photographs. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's an app that will give us the pronunciation correctly for the Latin names. Because when that voice comes out and it's American, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't teach us how to say the word correctly. Do you have an access to a tool at university for pronunciation?
I don't know if there's anything like that exists. The trick is nobody speaks Latin anymore, so you just say it with conviction. Really elucidate it.
Nice.
Yeah. So you just cotonista or cotonista. That's tricky. That's really tricky.
Yeah, because you know,
especially if you then go and learn it one way.
Is the proper way?
Yeah.
No,
like I've heard
swiped
of
left
different ways. Be like if it's a plant's a little bit greyish, then it's kind of good.
Yeah. The Latin terms often are
Can give you the
descriptive. It's very helpful. Or they're named after someone brilliant who discovered it or recently named it. No, sorry.
No one will probably ever build one either because nobody's the authority on it anymore. Nobody knows how to pronounce
You've identified a gap on the market.
it.
So somebody should take that up.
Pronunciation guys.
It's different every country.
We'll get a student on it. What can be handy for that actually, and really good for your learning, is your local botanical society. So fellow plant geeks who take field trips and are so eager to learn and teach, particularly teach. You often have access to the country's experts on a Sunday foray around your local reserve, and they'll be pretty confident about their pronunciation. Yes, Bruce?
Yeah, so Mari Taylor, how many of you know Mari? Some of the local, yeah, so Mari runs the botanical group. I think she's not the only one. We had hoped she could come and join us for the workshop, but she had something else on this weekend. But there is definitely a local botanical group, and they have fantastic trips. Have a look at their Facebook site and go on some of their trips, and then you can all learn the botanical name pronunciations of each other. But having said that, don't be fearful of giving it a go. I never did Latin at school. I did French. I don't know why. But Latin had already got to the stage at secondary school, even with an older person like me, where it was going out of favour. And so pretty well I can assure you that everybody you ever talk to who's pronouncing a botanical name, they'll all be making mistakes. So do not be fearful, just get in amongst it and give it a go.
So
I did have that experience. Just give it a go. Yeah, just give it a go. That's what I'm trying to get across, I guess. I did have an experience with a visiting German professor who wanted to see our flora but was not ever going to have time to learn it to the species level. So he wanted to know about the families. And so I was saying, oh, that's Asteraceae. And he's like, Asteraceae? I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds way better. So there's always a Kiwi accent to it. There's no hope. But it's just a tool to get to know the rako, the plant that you're looking at. So the most important thing of all of this is take home today is practice, practice, practice. And today we actually have an opportunity with one of the country's foremost botanists in the room to practice when we go to Dolbar Reserve, and that's coming up next. We're going to meet there at 2 o'clock, and I'm bringing muffins to incentivize you. You're probably hungry by now. It's been